Chapter 9, Mysterious Woods, and Familiar Faces. The Legend of Sunset Shimmer, Majora's Mask. By Ganondorf 8. October 12, 2015. Chapter 9, Mysterious Woods, and Familiar Faces.
Queen Chrysalis!
Exclaimed Twilight as she darted out in front of me in order to attack the character whom she assumed was an enemy of hers, and while I tried to hold her back, she was much too fast for me. I could only close my eyes, and wait for the inevitable, which would be Twilight learning an important lesson. Granted, my reaction would have been to do the same thing given what happened in Hyrule, yet I chose to wait and see given this hag had not shown any kind of aggression.
What? Why is this fairy buzzing around me?
Asked Chrysalis.
I don't know how you got here, Chrysalis, but I'm not going to let you get away with whatever it is you're planning,
replied Twilight. She continued to dart about, making the occasional strike against her head, and all Chrysalis could do was swat at my friend in an effort to get rid of her. In the meantime, I tried to bring the situation under control by telling Twilight that this wasn't who she thought it was with utter failure, but eventually I began losing patience, which resulted in me screaming. This brought Twilight to a sudden stop where both she and Chrysalis looked at me as though I had made some kind of grave sin, so all I did was blush immensely before sinking down to the ground in utter embarrassment for having to yell to stop all of this.
Why did you stop me?
Twilight asked as she floated back over to me.
That's not who you think it is, I replied. What? Of course that's Queen Chrysalis, the ruler of the changelings, who I've dealt with on several occasions where she tried to cause all kinds of problems for the ponies of Equestria. I'm assuming you know all of this based on your own studies, right?
Asked Twilight.
I know who she is according to what you've told me about her in our friendship reports, but this isn't the same person you've come to know, I replied.
I then had to remind her that in this world, while the people we encounter look like those we know from both the human world and Equestria, they were completely different characters because of the memories they have of Termina as opposed to their own. Twilight then blushed a bright red, knowing she had made a grave mistake, and began begging for forgiveness as she allowed her emotions to cloud her judgment. I know that feeling pretty well, as it was my emotions which caused me to abandon my own studies in the first place. I always saw myself as superior to every pony else, but in truth this was just a delusion on my part, for friendship is what I lacked back then along with humility. I then explained the rest of Queen Chrysalis's story to Twilight regarding her role in Hyrule, where she served as one of Ganondorf's surrogate mothers who taught him the ways of evil magic, and she along with her sister manipulated the Gerudo into following such an evil man. Even though I could never forgive Chrysalis for what she did, I could tell this version lacked any kind of evil force coming from her heart. Instead, I could sense a warm glow, although it was starting to show signs of darkness given Twilight's actions, who flew over to the witch in an attempt to save face.
I am so sorry for attacking you like I did. You just reminded me of someone I know. Someone who caused me and my friends plenty of trouble, and it made me lash out in sheer frustration because of my own failings. At least you had the gall to apologize, little fairy, so I'll forgive you this one time. Know that if you ever do something like that again, I'll have no choice but to use you in one of my magic brews, as fairy magic has quite a lot of potential,
said Chrysalis. Twilight then floated back over to me, her head hung in shame, and her face blushing with both embarrassment and sadness, where she hid underneath my hat, which made me look at Chrysalis with scorn in my eyes.
I was only kidding when I said that I would use your fairy, so there's no need to be angry with me. Besides, that little one didn't really do all that much to me other than become annoying. Anyway, welcome to the Magic Hag's Potion Shop, where we brew all kinds of potions to suit your needs. I am Kotake, and I generally run this place on my own, seeing as my sister, Kum, has her hands full dealing with the swamp tour which goes through this area. You know, it's been a while now since anyone has come along in order to go to the Deku Palace, but then who can blame them because of all that poison located near there? You don't know the half of it, I said. Has it gotten even worse?
Asked Chrysalis.
Actually, I don't know what the condition is, for I haven't been to the Deku Palace, and I really want to, I replied. You want to go there? Not many are willing to do what you just said, but I suppose you've got some kind of valid reason, so would that make you a boat cruise customer? My sister would be so thrilled to hear that someone has finally come along to take that cruise, but I'm afraid that I have some unfortunate news. Kum has gone into the woods located behind this shop looking for mushrooms which we need for some new potions which are sure to be of merit. I'm not very good when it comes to finding those little things, so she takes it upon herself to find them,
said Chrysalis.
Well, she hasn't been back for quite some time, I said. And how do you figure this?
asked Chrysalis.
The man who works at the Swamp Tourist Center told me she hasn't been back for quite some time,
I replied. This prompted Chrysalis to begin fumbling about as though she was looking for something, and as she searched, I could hear various items clanging about, which was a reminder that the shop really needed some organization given the clutter. After a couple of minutes, she finally turned her attention back at me, holding what looked like some kind of musty book. It must be really old given how dust escaped from it when she opened it using a latch on the side, and the sounds of pages flipping almost made this whole experience boring. I began upon noticing she was ignoring me.
I was wondering if you were listening to what I said. Of course I was listening, impatient child, but I'm also looking up where Coom wrote down in our journal about how long she said she was going to be gone for. All of this clutter in our shop really needs to be addressed one day.
Chrysalis moaned before continuing to look through her book, which made me feel just as embarrassed as Twilight, even though I didn't use any anger, and just when it looked as though things would get even more dull, Chrysalis slammed her hand onto the pages of the book before making some kind of horrible sound.
Aha! This is what I needed to find. Now then, Coom left at around this time, and this much time has passed since then. Yes. That fellow was right about my sister being gone for so long. Say, could you go find her for me? You said she was in the woods, right?
I asked.
Yes, but I must warn you that those dense trees are not what you think they are. The Woods of Mystery is a place where one can easily become lost due to how every path looks identical with one another, and the pathway is never the same during each subsequent day. Ask the monkeys that live there for guidance, as they know that area better than anyone else. If you do manage to find where my sister is in there, please come back and let me know, because I do worry about her,
replied Chrysalis. It looks as though I have no choice but to find her sister, otherwise I won't be able to reach the Deku Palace. Upon leaving the shop and stepping back outside, my eyes had to adjust to the brightness given how dark it was in there, but I then noticed the sun was beginning its descent, which means I have a couple more hours before nightfall.
So where are these Woods of Mystery?
I asked.
I believe the entrance is over there,
replied Twilight as she pointed towards a cave entrance at the far end of the clearing.
What do you know about these woods?
I asked.
Tattle has never been there before according to her memories, so I won't be able to guide us through it. However, Chrysalis did say that we should seek the advice of the monkeys. You know, I find it difficult for me to view her as a good person in Termina given what she has done,
replied Twilight.
Like I said, everything is a case of black and white when it comes to this sort of thing. Those who were enemies in the human world, or in Equestria, have become friends, as is the case with Queen Chrysalis, yet others who were friends have become enemies, which means having to overcome them even when we don't want to. I'm used to dealing with this, but you need to show a little more restraint,
I said. Even though Twilight had tears forming in her eyes because of what she did, I reassured her that I wasn't angry because I would have done the exact same thing. While I've changed for the better, there are times where my anger comes forth from deep within, an anger that could cause anyone to cry, and make me feel guilty over regressing back to my past.
Guess we should go into the Woods of Mystery, and find Chrysalis's sister,
said Twilight.
Want to know who it is?
I asked. My question caused Twilight to react quite surprisingly, and said she was surprised that I figured it out without actually finding the sister, but then I told her that there were some consistencies between Termina and Hyrule. It took me a while to understand this one, but it seems that those from the human world and Equestria for the most part who appeared in the former, will appear here in the latter as the same character just with different personalities. While this didn't make much sense in my own head, I figured it out, which should make future encounters more appropriate.
In Hyrule, Chrysalis was one of the two witches that I told you about, and since she is also here, then Trixie is most likely who we'll find in the woods. What? Trixie is related to Queen Chrysalis?
Asked Twilight.
Only in this world,
I replied while trying to calm my friend down before she loses it again. I know it sounds weird to me too, but I just roll with it because that way you don't end up making some kind of blunder which could prove costly later. Once I climbed down the ladder, and onto the ground, as I had no intention of jumping off as I was bound to slip on the water below, I made my way to the entrance of the Woods of Mystery, where a strange aura could be felt coming from the entrance. Could this be Trixie's magic that she has in Termina, or is it something else?
Sorry about my outburst like that, Sunset, but Trixie did do some things back in Ponyville,
said Twilight.
As you've told me before,
I said.
I know she left on good terms, and I heard from Rarity, Fluttershy, and Applejack that she has changed for the better, but I still have this uneasy feeling about her. I guess it's difficult for me to let go of something so trivial given how Trixie has proven herself,
said Twilight.
If you give someone a chance, and they are willing to show change, then you know you've made the right decision, I said.
In the human world, Trixie did try to get rid of us during the Battle of the Bands due to being furious over how her band didn't go to the finals, but she along with most everyone else at Canterlot High were under the Siren's control, so her actions weren't by her own will. Still, I believe this encounter will be a good one, for if someone as evil as Queen Chrysalis can be good in Termina, then Trixie will be the exact same thing, even though she was nice to begin with. Upon entering the Woods of Mystery, it brought back memories of the Lost Woods from before, and I think this place was meant to be a recreation of it. It didn't feel ominous because of how bright everything was, but I knew not to be fooled that way, otherwise I'd lose before getting anywhere.
Sunset.
Began Twilight.
What is it?
I asked.
Do you see the monkey jumping up and down in front of us?
Asked Twilight.
It's kind of hard to miss something like that,
I replied. There was a monkey a short distance away who was hopping up and down, but since Chrysalis said that we needed to follow the monkey as they knew the way, hopefully this one will be cooperative. I took a single step forward which prompted the monkey to stop hopping, so I knew I had gotten its attention, so when I took another step forward, it turned around and began to run away.
We've got to keep up with it,
said Twilight.
I know, otherwise we could find ourselves back at the beginning again,
I said. Running after the monkey and making sure not to trip up on anything, I found it difficult to keep up with it given it was running on all fours while I was running on two legs. Just when it looked like I was about to catch it, it suddenly changed direction without warning, prompting me to do the same thing. Sighing under my breath, I followed the monkey into another tunnel where I found myself surrounded by some unusual fauna, but I had no time to investigate as I can't afford to lose sight of the monkey. It changed directions again, although I was prepared this time, so when I followed it down the next tunnel, something came out of nowhere which struck me in my leg, causing me to trip and fall on my face.
What just bumped into me?
As I climbed back onto my feet, I saw what looked like a giant turtle stomping about, but when it took notice of me again, it went into its shell, and came hurtling my way. It struck my stomach this time, which caused me to fall down onto my rear, yet my concern was the monkey, as surely it had run off by now. Surprisingly, it was still there, having stopped to see what was happening.
This creature is called a snapper, and despite being a turtle, it can move relatively quickly. They never expose the weak part of themselves, which is their underbelly, so you need to find some way of attacking it from below,
said Twilight.
What would constitute for that?
I asked.
I'm thinking that those Deku flowers might work, as when you dive into them, you are technically below the ground, and when you come back out, you could potentially strike something from below if it happened to be passing by,
replied Twilight. I quickly darted my eyes back and forth hoping for a Deku flower to be nearby, but there weren't a way, so I've got to avoid these turtles as I can't defeat them due to their shells. The monkey beckoned me to follow it again, and I chased after it only for the snapper to come charging at me again by hiding in its shell, yet because of being a bit further ahead of it, I managed to get away before I take additional damage.
Chrysalis never said anything about monsters, I said. I guess she doesn't come here very often, said Twilight. It would have been nice to have been given a fair warning, I moaned. In the next area, the monkey was able to avoid 3 more snappers as though they were ignoring it, and I felt shocked at how it just weaved through them all, and I was forced to take evasive actions to avoid them. The first 2 I avoided by jumping over them, which proved to be difficult given their fast speed, but the third one ended up hitting me in the leg just like that previous one, so I limped my way across the remainder of the clearing before following the monkey into yet another tunnel where I suddenly heard the sounds of someone moaning. Do you hear that? It sounds like Trixie, replied Twilight. Only way to find out is to see for ourselves, I said. What about your leg? You were limping for a few seconds back there, said Twilight. I'm used to being injured like this given what I experienced before, but my leg will recover quickly as all I need is to rest for a few moments, I said. Twilight then gave me a rather perplexing look which made me react to it. Don't give me that look. I know I've been hurt, but it's minor at best. If the wound had been far more severe, I would be bleeding right now, and in need of consuming a potion. I may be reckless sometimes, Twilight, yet I'm not so reckless that I'd allow myself to be killed. Looks like we're both reckless, laughed Twilight. It took me a couple of seconds to realize the meaning behind her words, and I couldn't help but join in the laughter, seeing as both of us were pretty stubborn. That's when the moaning sound got louder, as though Trixie was either in extreme pain, or wanted us to stop talking, and seeing what was wrong with her. I walked forward where several monkeys had been surrounding her, and they quickly ran away upon my approach. Sure enough, it was indeed Trixie, as I recognized those moans as belonging to her, and she definitely looked real bad.
While there were no signs of blood, I could sense that she was weaker than normal, so I walked up to her to see what I could do.
Ah. Ow. I'm in so much pain right now. Help me,
said Trixie in a weak voice.
What happened?
I asked.
I came here to the Woods of Mystery in order to pick mushrooms so that my sister Kotake can use them to make some new potions, and I was generally minding my own business given how I've never caused any grief for the local creatures. Just when I thought things would remain peaceful as I continued picking. Bam! I get hit from behind. That pesky skull kid. Did she think I wouldn't recognize her if she hit her face? Granted, it was quite surprising to see her wearing such an ancient mask like that, but still the fact remains she attacked me for no reason,
replied Trixie.
You know about Majora's mask?
I asked.
Yes, I'm familiar with some of the legends associated with it, but much has become lost over the centuries. What I do know is that the mask is able to augment the powers of those who wear it by granting them a dark power which shouldn't exist in this day and age. The Skull Kid apparently can use magic as though she has been using it her entire life, but where could someone like her have studied the arcane arts?
Replied Trixie. This didn't sound quite right in the context of this video game, but rather it sounds like some aspect of Equestria has made it through here. Just like what happened before with my own magic. If Starlight can use her own magic combined with the dark power that stems from the mask, she is even more dangerous than I could have realized, and it could get even worse should her memories from Equestria somehow be restored. I shook my head as such a thought was too scary for me to even think about. Twilight had the exact same reaction, as this new knowledge has worsened the situation, and this came from Trixie no less, which probably caught her by surprise.
Why did she attack you?
I asked.
Most likely to demonstrate her newfound powers, and to take advantage of someone who she viewed as beneath her. Oh, ow. To think she's that powerful. And now I can't even move. If she had truly been merciless, I wouldn't be speaking with you right now, so I can safely say that the Skull Kid's power hasn't reached truly terrifying levels, yet judging from your expression, you know something about that.
Replied Trixie. I couldn't tell her about how I'm able to reset time, for even though I know she would believe me given her magical knowledge, telling her could cause problems when it comes to time paradoxes. Trixie raised an eyebrow when I refused to answer her curiosity, which made this all the more awkward when I began sweating like crazy, but she then lowered her brow, which confirmed that she had lost interest.
Well, you don't need to say anything as I'm sure you have your reasons. Ow. I can't keep going on like this. I need to heal these wounds, otherwise I'm stuck here. You. Don't you have anything that gives you energy? I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, so there's no need to repeat myself. Sorry, but I don't have anything like that, I replied. Ah. What is this? You're no help even though it's obvious that you know what I'm talking about. I say, you're not at all what you make yourself out to be, said Trixie. I did come here on behalf of your sister, I said. Kotake is worried about me. I feel bad about making her worry so much, but I can't do anything right now unless I can get my strength back. You. Go back to see my sister, and tell her what has happened. She will give you what you need to restore my wounds, so please hurry up. Don't you dare use it for yourself, otherwise I'll make sure you pay immensely, so focus on bringing it back to me, said Trixie. She then collapsed down, which made me feel sorry for her, but I didn't like how she threatened me into helping her. I was going to help her anyway regardless of the situation, but using threats wasn't the way to go about it. Walking away from Trixie, given there was nothing I could to help, there were several exits for me to use, so I chose one at random in the hopes that I picked wisely, and a few seconds later I was back outside where the Magic Hag's potion shop was. That was awkward, I sighed. She threatened you to help her, shouted Twilight. I know, I said. Even though in my mind we shouldn't help her because of what she said, I think we should because not even someone like Trixie deserves to be attacked, said Twilight. What do you think about what she said regarding Majora's mask? I asked. Starlight Glimmer is even more powerful than we suspected, and if you've come to the same conclusion as I have, her equestrian magic has somehow been retained even though the human world has been changed, replied Twilight. I nodded my head in approval, which caused her to float up and down with glee. I was hoping you would say that, Sunset, so at least both of us are on the same page. We both know that equestrian magic can be unpredictable given what we've seen happen in the human world, and if this world is any indication, who knows what could happen. We need to stop her at all costs, I said. Assuming we can, said Twilight. Unfortunately, you're right, as while we may claim that we can stop her, I didn't actually fight her last time as I just needed the ocarina. If I do fight her in an actual battle, I may or may not prevail depending on just how strong she really is.
I said. This conversation was making me feel pretty bad, and Twilight was feeling the same way, so we quickly changed the subject to figuring out how to help Trixie with her problem.
She needs a potion of some kind, but the problem is I don't have a bottle to carry any around. Maybe Chrysalis has one?
Asked Twilight.
I hope so, otherwise we're not going anywhere,
I replied. Making my way back to the potion shop, climbing the ladder, and going through the door, I immediately collided with some knickknacks which someone had propped up a few feet away, and it caused me to fall over to the sounds of clangs from metal objects, the flapping of book pages, and even one or two crashes courtesy of bottles breaking. As I tried picking myself up from the floor, Chrysalis shuffled her way over to me, and offered her hand as a means of picking me up, where she began bowing several times over.
I'm okay, you know, as that didn't really hurt. Sorry that I placed those there in front of the door, for I was trying to clean up some of the rabble I have around here. Guess I forgot that you were coming back with news about what has happened to my sister,
said Chrysalis. She then pulled me along where I collided with additional knickknacks until we reached the counter, and ended up knocking over a large stack of books which scattered across the floor, yet Chrysalis didn't seem fazed, as though she wasn't concerned with my various blunders.
Again, I really need to be better organized, so don't feel bad about knocking things over.
I did offer to help clean up, but a wave of her hand and refusing meant that she was more concerned with what I had to say about Trixie.
I take it you found her? Yes, but she was attacked by the Skull Kid,
I replied.
Come again?
Asked Chrysalis.
The Skull Kid attacked her, although she calls herself Starlight Glimmer,
I replied.
What's that? The Skull Kid got to Coom? No. Impossible. Unthinkable? My sister is far more powerful than most people in Termina, so I'm going to have to call your bluff on this one. What you just said? That's ridiculous. If it's just the Skull Kid, then what harm could she possibly do?
Asked Chrysalis.
She wears a mask on her face which gives her dark powers,
I replied.
What? Why didn't you tell me this sooner? I know of only one mask that possesses that kind of power, but how could the Skull Kid have gotten her hands on it? I can't imagine seeing her finding that accursed item, so something else must have happened,
said Chrysalis. Twilight then slinked down and hid behind my hat, for she knew what happened, and still felt guilty over not being able to stop it, and I decided to defend my friend by not revealing that bit of information. Instead, I told Chrysalis how the mask was found by Sonata Dusk, and how Starlight acquired the mask by stealing it while the former was sleeping.
That mask saleswoman was a fool for wanting to find it, for those who created it hid it away for a reason. Nothing has changed when it comes to the heart being corrupted by thoughts of desire. What about your sister?
I asked.
Oh. I had completely forgotten about that, so take this potion to her. It's a standard red potion which can restore life energy, and should be what she needs to recover from whatever that Skull Kid did to her. Don't you dare drink that yourself, otherwise I'm going to be very annoyed. If you manage to give that potion to my sister, you can keep the bottle for yourself, as I have no need for it due to having extras lying around somewhere,
replied Chrysalis. She then began looking around the counter for the potion in question, and a flurry of knickknacks went flying everywhere, prompting me to avoid being hit, yet she showed deep concern towards her sister given how she was throwing things about. Eventually, she managed to produce a bottle filled with red liquid which I recognized from my adventures in Hyrule.
Take that potion to her. Go back through the Woods of Mystery, and again make sure you don't drink it yourself. Before I go, I do have one question,
I began.
Make it a quick one,
said Chrysalis.
Your sister went into the Woods of Mystery in order to get mushrooms, yet couldn't you have gone and done that?
I asked.
Long ago, this powerful nose of mine could detect them wherever they grew, and for that I used to go out there to collect mushrooms for my potions, but these days my nose has lost its touch, which is why Coom goes out for me. If not for my age being an issue, collecting mushrooms would have solely been handled by me, and Coom wouldn't have to leave the Swamp Tourist Center at inconvenient times. Sigh. It's tough getting old. Everything is usually handled by young people anyway,
replied Chrysalis. I didn't think she looked that old, but I didn't want to question her about it in case she got offended, so then I asked why she needed mushrooms in the first place when practically any ingredient could make an effective potion.
Oh sure, I could use anything else, but the mushrooms in the Woods of Mystery have a special property which makes my potions really effective, so why try something else? If you think I'm going to reveal how they are used, I'm afraid I can't say as it's a trade secret.
Hearing her say that last part felt discouraging, so I took the bottle of red potion which I forgot to take, and was preparing to leave when Chrysalis said something else.
If you can find and bring some mushrooms here, I'll make it worth your while, for I'll use the first one you bring to create a powerful potion, and buy subsequent mushrooms for the right price. I'll buy them for about 50 rupees each, so if you need some money, you know a good way of getting some.
That sounds fair, I said.
Anyway, go and deliver that potion to my sister,
shouted Chrysalis. She began to shoo me away as an indicator to get going, so I left the potion shop making sure to place the potion she gave me into my pouch so that it wouldn't break along the way. Then I realized that I need to go through the woods of mystery again, which involves getting by those snappers, and maybe that same monkey will guide me through to Trixie.
We could find some of those mushrooms to earn some money,
suggested Twilight.
Maybe, but that might waste precious time,
I said.
True, as we don't really know the layout of those woods, so finding mushrooms may be difficult. Actually, it will be difficult as you would need to have a powerful sense of smell, and I don't think your human nose would be able to sniff one out. This is a prime example where being a pony is beneficial, for our noses are more powerful compared to human noses, but neither of us can resume our true selves while the world is like this,
said Twilight.
No need to remind me,
I sighed.
You miss being a pony, don't you?
asked Twilight.
Yeah, there are times where I miss running on 4 hooves, and using magic by firing it from my horn, but I'm fine with being a human,
I replied. Deep down, I really did want to become a pony, again, but something was holding me back, which I'm sure Twilight knows about. I also feel she won't force the issue as it is something I've got to figure out on my own whenever I feel ready to tackle it, yet I hope she provides the kind of advice I'll need for when that time actually comes. Still, I do want to become a pony, again, even if only for a little while, as it's part of who I am. I'm a pony, in reality, and this human form is something I chose because of what I did back then. Perhaps the other Twilight can help me deal with some of my more troubling issues, for I have been helping her cope with what transpired during the Friendship Games finale. Upon entering the woods of mystery again, the same monkey was waiting there for me, and beckoned me to follow, so I began running after it. Already, this felt really familiar as the route it was taking was exactly like before, and that meant encountering a single snapper on its own before running into 3 of them at the same time. Given what I know about these creatures, when they begin to charge at me after going into their shells, they must travel in a straight line until they come to a stop, so that does give me some leeway when it comes to avoiding them. The monkey entered the next clearing where the first snapper was, and it immediately took notice of me where it hid in its shell, and began to charge at me with that incredible speed. I really shouldn't be praising it for that, so just when it was about to hit me, I jumped over it, and continued following the monkey until we entered the next clearing where the other snappers were waiting. Again, the monkey weaved its way through, forcing me to have to do things the hard way, so I sighed and decided to take the initiative by running towards them, and I was able to get by 2 of them before they even knew what was happening, yet one still needed to be overcome. It went into its shell before charging at me where I jumped over it, although it did get my leg, which was really starting to become a problem. With that out of the way, I continued following the monkey into the clearing where Trixie was still lying on the ground in pain, and it sounded like she was feeling even worse given her moaning.
"You're back,"
said Trixie as I walked up to her.
"I've brought what you wanted,"
I said.
"Oh? You actually didn't drink the potion yourself? I must say that I'm surprised, as I would have thought you to be sinister, but I guess I've completely misjudged you, and for that I apologize. So long as nothing bad happened to the bottle," said Trixie. I then reached into my pouch, and took out the red potion before handing it over to her, where she took it using those grubby hands of hers. "Ah! That color! That smell! That's definitely Kotakis. No mistaking it at all."
Trixie then began to drink the potion really quickly without pausing for even a second, and upon finishing, she coughed up a little bit of red smoke for some unknown reason. After a few moments of waiting, she got onto her feet, where she suddenly experienced some kind of magical surge, and was soon flying on her broomstick, which felt really cliché.
"Feel the energy flow. Kum is revived. You saved me. I won't criticize you for taking your sweet time or anything, for you did your best despite the circumstances." "Happy to have helped,"
I said.
"Now, there has to be something I can do for you." "I know. You can keep this bottle that Kotake gave you, as I'm sure you'll find some use for it, but I have this feeling you want to go somewhere, otherwise why come all this way?" said Trixie. "I need to get to the Deku Palace," I said. "Really? Someone actually wants to go there? No one has been wanting to go down there for quite some time, so you'll have to forgive me for being surprised. Ever since that poison first showed up, no one has had the desire for taking the boat cruise, for those big octo are too frightening for them, but I feel you're not afraid of such things seeing as you are carrying a sword and shield," said Trixie. "I'm trying to understand why the swamp water has become poisonous," I said. "Well, if you can figure out some way of restoring Woodfall back to the way it used to be, then this part of terminal would be indebted to you. Anyway, I'm the swamp tour guide. I run the boat cruise which makes a stop at the Deku Palace, so come by if you want a free ride," said Trixie. With a cackle in her voice, she then flew off using her broom, so now I've got to get back to the Swamp Tourist Center. You know, I wish she could have taken me with her, for it means having to backtrack all that way again. Sighing, I walked off in a random direction as all of them go back to the entrance of the woods, and when I was back behind the Magic Hag's potion shop, I noticed another monkey was waiting for me by the passageway where those Deku Baba were. "What do you make of that?" I asked. "That monkey could be trying to beckon you to follow it," replied Twilight. "Not again," I moaned. "Might as well see what it wants," said Twilight. Walking past the potion shop, and looking up at the sky, the sun was starting to set, which meant I had wasted an entire afternoon helping out Trixie, so I'm hoping she won't say something about not operating the boat cruise at night, for that would be so inconvenient on so many levels. As soon as I got close to the monkey, it took a few steps forward towards me before it surprised me in a way which almost caused me to fall down. "You have strange powers, no?" Did you just speak?" I asked with my eyes wide open in shock. "Surprised?" "Yes," I answered. "Humans strange creatures, yet you are different, something unusual. As though you were animal too." I guess this monkey could sense that I was in fact a pony, and I didn't know if I should be happy or sad about that. I mean, I was a pony, during my early years, but now live as a human, and they aren't as strange as it thinks. Still, it reminded me of my true identity despite all I've been through. "Me been watching you lately, this swamp, filled with poison water. You know of the poison?" I asked. "Poison spread across swamp, will soon consume all water, make it impossible for creatures to live here. It comes from temple." "Really?" I asked. "Temple above waterfall strange. Brother go to temple in order to find out what wrong. Dark aura coming from temple which is cause of problems, but brother no able to find entrance. It hidden real well, and after many attempts, brother gave up. Temple for Deku only. Brother captured by Deku. Now in palace. Help." Despite missing specific words, I have to admit that this monkey can talk really well, and thanks to this piece of information, things are starting to make sense. Whatever is happening inside of the temple is the source of the poison, but I can't gain access to this place until I speak with the Deku Queen. Then it dawned on me that the monkey mentioned its brother had been captured, but why do something like that? Looks like there was another part of the puzzle which needs uncovering before I can solve it. After agreeing that I would go to the Deku Palace, seeing as that was my original plan, the monkey jumped into the thicket before disappearing, leaving me to make my way there. "What do you think, Twilight?" I asked. "The Deku capturing a monkey sounds really weird, but there's got to be more to it than that," replied Twilight. "It might be normal for them as honestly, do we even know anything about this place?" I asked. "No, but I said that because it just felt strange that plant-like creatures would capture a monkey. What I'm more interested in is the temple that other monkey mentioned which exists somewhere in Woodfall. You told me that going into temples allowed you to progress through the story of the last game, so I'm assuming it will be the same here where going into one will progress things," replied Twilight. "Maybe, but last time I didn't need to reset time," I said. "That will make things more complicated, but there's no point in dwelling over it until we actually find out for ourselves. Our next destination is the Deku Palace, for we've got to find out what's really going by speaking to the Deku Queen, so I hope you're used to being a Deku scrub as you'll have to stay as one for a while," said Twilight. Aside from the pain I go through during the transformation process, I'm getting used to my other form, and she was right about me needing to remain that way, as I doubt the Deku would appreciate a human girl wandering around their territory. As I started heading back towards the Swamp Tourist Center, the same Deku Babas and Mini Baba appeared before me. A stark reminder that monsters respawn on a permanent basis aside from rare occasions, so I took out my Kokiri sword, and cut them all down using several sword swings. Yeah, I'm not experienced enough to cut them all with one strike.
As each one fell over and disappeared in what could be described as rotting away, I picked up 3 Deku sticks which have so far not done me any favors, yet I sense I'll be needing them soon enough. Wading through the swamp water again wasn't my idea of fun, as I didn't like it the first time, but this had to be done because I wasn't entirely comfortable hopping from lily pad to lily pad as a Deku, and I don't want to drown given the water was quite deep. Once I reached the other shore where the center was, the first thing I did was shake off the excess water from my tunic before Twilight brought something to my attention.
Can you see that small statue over there? I don't see anything, I replied. Take a closer look, suggested Twilight. All right, I said as I began looking forward, where I almost had to squint my eyes, for what she was trying to show me was quite far away. At the edge of the water right by the wall was a statue in the shape of an owl, but I don't recall ever seeing it before. I wonder if that's one of those statues Flash Sentry said I should activate? He did mention something about playing that song he showed me in order to warp here again.
Taking a slight detour, I ran over to where it was situated, and defeated a mini Baba which happened to be close by, so picking up the Deku stick it dropped, I took a closer look at the statue. It was certainly majestic and well crafted, but could this thing really enable me to warp here whenever I need to?
How am I supposed to activate it anyway? Maybe using your sword, suggested Twilight. I don't want to destroy it, I said. Perhaps some kind of interaction will work instead, suggested Twilight. I began looking at every last aspect of the statue in the hopes of finding some way to activate it, and after spending 2 minutes pushing and pulling at different parts, I was about to give up when touching the beak caused a bright light which made the statue change. This must be what happens when it gets activated, but I do feel awkward for having wasted so much time trying to figure it out. Twilight noticed me feeling bad about having wasted precious time despite still having plenty to go before needing to start over again, but she understood how I felt. I know we have practically an infinite amount of time, but if only we could have more of it. We've spent half a day here in Woodfall, yet it feels like we haven't made much progress, I sighed.
Night of the first day, 60 hours remain.
Didn't the princess who you saw while remembering what the hero experienced say anything else about time?
Asked Twilight.
No, she pretty much said that the goddess of time would be watching over me, I replied. Then someone must know of a way to slow things down, said Twilight.
Things moving at a slower pace would really be appreciated at this point, for I was beginning to realize that my current approach wasn't working, for I was just simply taking too long. Having more time would be beneficial, but who would be a time expert? A dojo? Maybe, but she may not have that kind of knowledge given she was affected by time restarting. What about Flash Sentry? Maybe, yet would he be willing to say something? Aside from them, I couldn't think of anyone else, so unless some kind of miracle occurs, I'm stuck with having to deal with the standard flow of time. I then walked back over to the ladder, and climbed up it before entering the center, and Trenderhoof was still there at his desk, so I walked towards him.
Welcome back. I see from the water dripping down you that you've been trudging through the swamp water,
said Trenderhoof.
It's been a worthwhile experience, I moaned. The old hag who runs the boat cruise has finally come back after being gone for so long, and I suspect you've got something to do with it, am I right? Well, I'm glad you were able to bring her back, for it means business can resume like normal despite the swamp water near the Deku Palace being poisonous,
said Trenderhoof.
Am I too late?
I asked.
For what?
Asked Trenderhoof.
The sun has gone down now for the night, and I think the boat cruise isn't going anywhere until the morning, I replied. I have no idea what made you think of that, but that old hag runs it every waking hour because it's her way of providing a good service. I know we don't get many people come through here what with the poison, yet I gotta admit she is brave for wanting to continue her service. Anyway, you should go over there, and talk to her where she will get the boat cruise ready for you. Oh, and since she's come back now, you can finally take part in the pictograph contest I mentioned last time you were here,
said Trenderhoof. I then began rubbing my chin because I actually forgot about that contest given I was busy trying to help Trixie, and Trenderhoof slapped his head in response before heaving a heavy sigh which showed he was annoyed slightly.
Let me explain it again. If you take a pictograph of something within the swamp, and bring it back here, you'll win a prize depending on what kind of pictograph you took. The rarer the subject, the better the prize will be. Okay, what would you consider rare? I asked. A pictograph of the Deku Queen would be something to see, but unless you happen to be a Deku scrub, you won't be getting access to her, let alone the palace, as any non-Deku will be denied entry,
replied Trenderhoof.
What about your daughter?
I asked.
You've met her?
Asked Trenderhoof.
I've purchased a few maps from her,
I replied.
That daughter of mine has a very good heart, and she is very skilled at making maps which have proven invaluable to adventurers aplenty, but I do wish that she wouldn't go around wearing what she does. It doesn't look right to me, but I suppose it's my fault that she has an obsession with fairies, and at her age no less. You could say I was overprotective of my daughter, and for that I spoiled her too much. I'm just relieved you didn't take a pictograph of her, as that would have been rather humiliating. Still, if that's what makes her happy, then I suppose I ought to be more accepting of what she does. Say, I was wondering if you could tell my daughter something for me,
said Trenderhoof.
What's that?
I asked.
Could you please ask her not to go outside in that outfit anymore? Wearing something like that just makes her look so unnatural,
replied Trenderhoof. I was surprised at how much he felt about what Pinkie Pie does with her life, but I suppose he was just being a concerned parent who wanted his child to be safe. Pinkie wearing a green spandex suit complete with red pants, and a hood with pointy ears does look ridiculous, yet she obviously doesn't care what she looks like as long as she remains happy. Even in a world where there is sadness everywhere, Pinkie manages to maintain her positive attitude. Thanking Trenderhoof for reminding me about this contest, as I had this feeling the best prize would be something I'd find useful for my journey, I walked over to where Trixie was now behind what looked like a small hole in the wall where her face barely protruded through it.
Oh. It's you again. Thanks for what you did back there. When I left you back in the woods, I immediately went to see Kotake, so as to let her know that I was okay, and from there I returned here in order to resume the boat cruise,
said Trixie.
Do you actually run this at night?
I asked.
The boat cruise is always available whenever anyone has need of it. Besides, I don't go on the cruise myself, as the boat has a magical property which allows it to go to its intended destination, the Deku Palace, and from there head back here for someone else to use. That's how I'm able to get some shut-eye, otherwise I'd be cranky by the time the boat goes out during nightfall. One thing you should know is the boat will remain at the Deku Palace indefinitely unless you ride it back here, but considering only you have shown a desire to go to the palace, you might as well just have it stay there until you're finished with your business,
replied Trixie. She then began rummaging through something behind the wall, and I had no idea what it could be given how this whole setup of where she was just felt completely out of place. Eventually, after tossing a couple of things out which nearly hit me, she took out a small plaque, and presented it to me.
Okay, this is how much it will cost you. Children are 10 rupees, adults are 50 rupees, and it's 30 rupees for a couple. As for a group price, I'm still working out the details on that one. Guess I'll pay 10 rupees, I said. Normally, that's what you would do, but because you helped me out back in the woods, I'm going to do something a little different. In a special deal just for you, I'll let you take this cruise for free just this once, but next time you'll have to pay, okay? Yes, we've got a special going on right now, so we're giving this out for free. Just give me a second to find it, as it's somewhere among all of this junk in here,
said Trixie. She then disappeared into the shadows of the hole, and the sounds of objects tumbling about could be heard. I was hoping she was okay given how there were sounds of glass shattering, pots clanging, and even wood splintering. After a few minutes, Trixie popped her head back out before producing what looked like an old-fashioned camera, and judging from the gestures with her hands, she wanted me to take it.
This is a pictograph box which you can use to take all kinds of pictures, and store them for safekeeping if you happen to like them. It looks old, I commented. Granted, the style does look ancient, but this is actually the latest model that has been created. Years ago, you could only take one picture at a time, and without any color, but thanks to improvements in technology, it can now take up to 10 pictures all in glorious color. If you take a nice picture from the boat, take it to that fella over there, for I overheard you two talking about that contest of his. All right. The boat's leaving,
said Trixie. After taking the pictograph box, and placing it around my neck due to it having a thick string that serves as a necklace, she then handed over a ticket which must be what I need in order to proceed. Thanking her for everything, I left the tourist center, and upon looking down at the water below, I could see the boat in question.
Looks fancy, I commented. As long as it's sturdy enough and gets us where we need to go, it doesn't really matter what it looks like,
said Twilight.
Yeah, I suppose you're right,
I said as I climbed down the ladder, and proceeded to climb into the boat before sitting down.
I'll admit that it's also pretty cozy. In fact, I could probably sleep here for a while until we arrive at our destination.
Twilight then floated over next to me, and made herself comfortable, which indicated she had the exact same idea in mind. The boat then began to move, so the only thing for me to do is fall asleep, which should be easy seeing as I feel so comfy. I drifted off to sleep, where I immediately began dreaming, and once again I dreamt about the end of Termina just like before.
Oh no! Not this dream again. Sunset Shimmer?
Asked Twilight.
Twilight? What are you doing here?
I asked.
I must be having the exact same dream,
replied Twilight.
More like a nightmare,
I sighed.
Is this what you've been suffering from for these past few months? I can't believe you've had to endure this same dream over and over, all because of what you went through before, and if only I had been able to help you out sooner, but why am I here?
Asked Twilight.
It is because I willed it.
Because I was having this dream again, it meant having to deal with Ganondorf, yet he is someone Twilight has never met before, so who knows what kind of reaction she is going to get. Flames suddenly rose up in front of us, and the Dark Lord, as he called himself, appeared once again as a shadow, his eyes burning with fear that made me cower slightly, yet Twilight didn't feel the same way, but that's because she has no idea what was about to happen.
So? You are the one who possesses magic which is greater than most of those of your kind. You guide this child on a path of light. Yes? Most amusing. Who are you?
Asked Twilight.
My name is Ganondorf, and you did not need to ask such a question, for the child has told you all about what she experienced. Twilight Sparkle? Princess. Are you surprised that I would know your name? There is much that I am aware of, little one, and that includes the world which both of you call home. A world where magical energies flourish, which in turn produce much in the way of power. Such a power can be utilized to conquer all that you survey, and those who would resist would become nothing more than a mere memory cast aside where it fades away.
Replied Ganondorf. His eyes glowed even brighter, which made it difficult for me to breathe, yet Twilight appeared to be unaffected. Could it be because she's a fairy? Or, is she unaffected because I'm the one who is to be tormented and not her?
You know, you're not doing a good job of intimidating me,
said Twilight.
It is because of sheer ignorance that you remain defiant, little alicorn, but then that has always been one of your many flaws,
laughed Ganondorf.
Why are you doing this to my friend?
Asked Twilight.
The child has experienced hardships her entire life, and even when she believes that she has finally reached the point where she can revel in bliss, the nightmares of her past return to haunt her, and such ghosts cannot be overcome as they cling to a morbid existence. Her suffering is an amusement for me. The more anguish she experiences, the better, but then the true reasoning will come in time. Then there is you, little one. You possess a tormented soul just as strong as her, and that makes you just as vulnerable. Do not try to deny the truth for what it is, for you cannot hide from fate.
Replied Ganondorf. I could tell his words were now starting to affect Twilight, yet she continued to shrug them off in an attempt to not let it get to her.
Why struggle when you know that you cannot escape from your fate? Why do I feel strange?
Asked Twilight.
Because you are now experiencing hopelessness and despair,
replied Ganondorf.
I don't understand why you're doing this to me,
said Twilight.
The child has most likely informed you of what will happen to your respective worlds should she not exceed my expectations. Yet you, Twilight Sparkle, possess the same divine power that Sunset Shimmer holds in her hand. While she assumed the guise of the hero of time, you were under the guise of Zelda, and for that you currently hold one of the Triforce parts. The Triforce of Wisdom, which connects both of you together, and also to me. Fate in addition to my will have proven a most dangerous combination for you. Alicorn. For now you shall truly suffer insurmountable torment so that I will be amused with it.
Said Ganondorf. Twilight at first didn't believe what he was saying, but when her hand started to glow, she looked down at it, and sure enough the mark of the Triforce appeared, which meant he was telling the truth. He knew this would happen from the very beginning, yet I didn't see it because I never even considered such a possibility.
You want to destroy Equestria?
Asked Twilight.
Should the child prove herself unworthy of my expectations, your precious Equestria shall be no more, and those who you hold dear to your heart shall die. The same will apply to the world which Sunset Shimmer resides, for it too must be made to suffer. Perhaps you can spare such a fate from happening by becoming stronger, child, and you, little one, must ensure of her success, otherwise her failure shall be on your hands. You may think, little one, that the rulers of light and darkness can prevent my power from covering your world in darkness, and destroy it through mere corrosion of evil, yet their power is fresh compared with my ancient magic. Replied Ganondorf. Princess Celestia and Princess Luna will stop you,"
shouted Twilight.
"How amusing. You are defending them, and yet it is not their well-being which should be worrying you. No, you should be worrying more about your own lives, for this world shall test your resolves in ways which you have never experienced before,"
said Ganondorf. His eyes glowed even brighter than before, and his silhouette faded away as he came forward where Twilight could see him in the flesh as opposed to seeing only his shadow. I could tell that she was afraid of him just like I was, but why were his words so difficult to ignore as all he was doing was intimidating us? I know he could destroy both worlds as he wields such power, yet something about all this felt odd to me. Why not just get it over with? Why go through so much drama just to test how strong I've become? What is his true motive? All these questions were swirling in my head, and I didn't have an answer to even a single one of them.
"Is that fear I see in your eyes, Twilight Sparkle? Now you understand what it means to experience true evil, for when the time comes, the child shall face me in battle again, and you shall be there to experience all of it. Remember my words, child. Remember them. And do not betray my expectations of you."
Ganondorf laughed once again before clenching his hand into a fist where his Triforce mark appeared with all three pieces glowing where everything suddenly went white.
"Wah!"
I screamed as I woke up.
"Ah!"
screamed Twilight as she woke up, and almost falling into the water.
"That was the most horrifying nightmare I've ever had in my entire life." "That was no nightmare," I said. Seeing Ganondorf even within the confines of the dream world was an experience I'd rather never have again, but I feel this won't be the last time we'll be seeing him within our own subconscious. Even after what you told me what happened when he appeared in the human world, I couldn't even begin to imagine what it must have been like, but now I've experienced it with my own eyes,"
said Twilight.
"You understand what it means, don't you?"
I asked.
"We've got to do exactly what he says, otherwise our worlds are finished,"
replied Twilight. If there was one comforting thing to take from all of this, even though it isn't really all that much, I'm not going through this alone, as Twilight is there with me going through the same thing. I've got to try and figure out what Ganondorf is really planning, but it won't be easy as there is so much which doesn't make any sense to me. After spending a few moments waking up properly as Twilight and I were still feeling groggy, the boat finally came to a stop in front of what appeared the entrance of the Deku Palace, but my immediate concern involved several monkeys who ran through the entrance. There were also numerous sounds coming from within which sounded like chanting, and screaming, which made me wonder what was going on.
"Guess we've got to go in," I said. "Not before you change into a Deku scrub, as you can't go running about in there as a human, as they'll kick you out instantly," said Twilight.
She was right about this, and I knew that from this point onward, my true self would need to take a backseat for a while until I'm able to find what I need to access the temple. Hopefully, nothing will cause me to be discovered, for I don't think I'll be able to handle an entire tribe just by myself. To be continued. End of chapter.